Finally, Formula One is back in Melbourne for real. This time, we are actually going to go racing instead of just being there and going all back to their hotel rooms. But yes, how awesome is it to have Melbourne back on the Formula One calendar? So awesome, in fact, that we're going to have a special preview episode right here on the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pitch the Podium with a special segment that's also going to come out. More on that later on. But folks, welcome along to the show. My name is Soumil and I'm the host of The Driving Force on Disney Plus Hotstar, joined by Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team. And for a few moments, Kunal, we almost thought that the Australian GP won't happen again. This time, not due to COVID or anything else, freight. I mean, it just seems like, for now, everything that could possibly go wrong does go wrong with the Australian GP. But this time, we do have a bit of a savior.
Yes, DHL was the savior, and thanks to DHL stepping in, we are going to have a full house. The whole circus has landed and is ready to give us a cracking race at the Albert Park circuit in Melbourne, Australia. And Soumil, it's sort of like going around a full circle, especially with the whole embarrassment that was faced during the 2020 Australian Grand Prix. Fans didn't know whether the race was on. The promoters were wondering if they had to cancel, or would Formula One cancel, or would the FIA cancel, because eventually nobody wanted to lose money. They had to just make sure everybody got their insurances in place. So yes, but it's great. DHL stepped in, and isn't it strange? MotoGP had freight issues a couple of races ago. Or was it just the last race in Argentina? And then Formula One now has had freight issues as well. And I think we could have a certain Mr. Vladimir Putin to be blamed for this. Of course, indirectly so. But yeah, that's probably what all the sensors are picking up.
Yeah, it's crazy how there's been so many freight issues. But yeah, luckily, we're having the cars coming in. Gunther Steiner has said that they will be considering what exactly goes on, but that's a secondary matter, right? Heading into Formula One weekend, freight is something, but we want to be focused on the activities around the track. We want to be focused on the drama, the kind of showbiz that Formula One tends to do, and there was a fair bit of showbiz. V8 Supercars, or I think they don't call themselves V8 Supercars, just Supercars, which is a bit of a confusing name, because when you initially hear, Alonso and Perez are driving Supercars, one might say, well, which ones? Hurricanes? or maybe McLarens? But it was those Australian supercars, and my word, Kunal, they look awesome. They sound awesome. Just another reminder to all of us Formula One fans that, yes, that is an amazing series that does exist, and they'll be racing again together with F1.
Yes, it's a support series, and I love this whole, local marketing that Formula One is doing. Back in the Bernie era, it was all about my drivers will only drive a Formula One car. But now Liberty Media is saying, you know what? This sounds fantastic. Bring on some, V8 supercars. Hey, that's what I grew up calling them and, watching them race all along. It's always going to be the V8 supercars for me. But either way, yeah. So, Liberty Media said, bring along those cars. We'll put some of our famous drivers. The locals know these cars and the teams inside out. So why don't they just go and have a few laps, around the Albert Park circuit? And, the strange thing is, all along, Formula One would have thought that, a supercar is what a Formula One car is, but clearly not when you're in Australia, Soumil. So talking about, supercars, the medical car driver, and I now forget his name, especially the one who's going to be driving at the Australian Grand Prix, is also a supercars star in his own right. So, this is another very good marketing tool that Formula One is using to localize as many elements of the sport as they can, Soumil.
Yeah, Karl Reindler, he's the driver that we're talking about, and it's great that Formula One has done that. I remember previously, we had something interesting with Formula One. I think we had a MotoGP car, an F1 car, I think Mark Webber driving that, and a V8 supercar race all together at Albert Park. And great to see those memories properly kind of reiterated in a way with the supercars taking part at Albert Park once again. It's awesome to see what's happening here.
Yes, Lewis Hamilton would have been like, yeah, just get me the Yamaha MotoGP bike. I drove one just a few years ago. But, the Miami Grand Prix is up next. It's going to be the debut. I'm wondering if Alonso's going to jump into one of those Indy cars, and drive one of those local racing cars that happen, that are more familiar to the Americans. Although I beg to differ now, even though it's my own view that I should share. With Drive to Survive, probably Formula One is more popular in America than IndyCar. Again, just making a loose assumption, but I would love to see that happen. An IndyCar being driven at the Formula One circuit in Miami. Alonso's driven one, of course. McLaren, they've got an IndyCar and a Formula One team. There's always a talk of Colton Herta doing the crossover. It's just so many possibilities. I'd love for Liberty Media to pick something like that up as well, Soumil.
Yeah, exactly. The thing of it, a Formula One IndyCar kind of, I wouldn't say mashup because that's too loose a term, but say some sort of collaboration in some way possible with McLaren being the overarching one on that. That'll be cool. But I want to talk more about Albert Park as well, right? Because we've kind of discussed all the build-up that's happened around, but the circuit itself, Kunal, that's been a major attraction point for most of the fans as well. That it's changed massively. It's almost like Jeddah 2.0, not in terms of the corners, but just the speed of them and how wide they are and how ferocious they are. This just looks like a crazy circuit, as if the old one wasn't. I don't even know which is my favorite change because there are so many great ones that kind of made the racing so much better, especially that one in the second sector.
I'll put it this way, and this is something I think Romain Grosjean said a few years ago, so it's not my original idea. He said that Formula One is hell-bent on changing rules to make the cars race better. They're changing the formula. Yeah. They're forcing the teams to rethink, reinvent. And that, he said, was actually a very expensive proposition when it came to, creating entertaining races. He said, just go ahead and change the circuits. It costs lesser. It's something that can be done several times back and forth if it doesn't work, and then see what sort of layout actually works in giving you an entertaining race. So, maybe Liberty Media have taken a leaf out of the Romain Grosjean book, not the eating, the cooking book, but
the cookbook.
The cookbook, right? But yeah, although I must say I've driven 1,000,000 miles on Albert Park in the simulator myself. Okay, I love the circuit. I know the old circuit back off. I'd probably drive it in my dream if I had to, in my sleep if I had to.
Same.
That turns 9 and 10, that the one that they've changed or radically reprofiled and all of that, was my favorite corner because that was the one corner of the circuit that had a wall on the exit. Everything else has a gravel trap. Everything else has a bit of a distance. And now, of course, they've just increased that distance as well. So that's one corner I wish they wouldn't have taken off. But, I'm again an old schooler when it comes to Formula One. I'd love to see high-speed battles that happen. And as we know, Soumil, there are 4 DRS zones this weekend. And we did some really basic math, Soumil and I, and, DRS is 46% of the overall circuit layout. The circuit layout is 5.2 and the DRS is closely about 2.4 kilometers. And that is ridiculous. I don't know if it's, over-reliance on DRS, because I know Sundaram, our F1 stats guru, pulled out a stat saying after Monaco, Albert Park actually had the least number of overtakes for a circuit, Soumil.
It's overkill. I mean, really, when you come to think about it, if you get DRS at one section, right, you eventually carry it on to the end of the second one because there's no detection point. So there's 2 places where you do that. And think of it, if you pass someone, if you're behind in the detection zone, you get the DRS. You pass someone in the forthcoming DRS zone, you are ahead, but you are the person who still has the DRS for the next zone. So isn't that counterproductive in a way? I mean, that's the idea of DRS is supposed to be both cars can race each other, but the car behind has a massive advantage. And I know Formula One might be saying, well, we know that it won't be working out, so that's why you get a second opportunity. But what if someone actually gets past? They have a more lasting advantage. So it kind of feels like overkill in a way. We shouldn't be doing that. But again, I guess we'll only have to watch to find out how it works out, right?
Yeah, I guess so. At this moment, everything in theory either will say that it'll work fantastically well or not. And, at the moment, everyone's built a scenario, which is what you've said, that you will overtake in the first DRS zone when you have the opportunity to press the DRS. And then in the second DRS, you will just use the DRS wing to further build on your lead. But who knows, when you put a Max and a Charles and maybe a Sergio and a Carlos there, some really intelligent, smart, witty, naughty drivers, maybe they'll find a way to figure out how to make 4 DRSs work in their favor, Soumil.
Yeah, exactly. And that bit about Max and Charles, what if we have that cat and mouse game happening again? What if they kind of play it more strategically? It's a bit silly. I think 3 races down the line we'll get bored of it, but until it happens, I think it's going to be fun, right? So let's wait and watch what exactly happens here. But crazy how effective DRS is. And I don't know, maybe just get rid of it, right? Maybe once we get bored of it. But what do you reckon, Kunal?
That's actually what I was going to say, Soumil. In fact, the DRS has turned out to be so effective this year, especially on a car like the Red Bull, right? That I'm reminded of what Formula One was very boldly saying. We hope that with the 2022 rule changes, we have to take away the DRS and the cars are just able to naturally race each other. But the truth is, now it just seems like an over-reliance. They're saying, we don't care how we get entertaining races, so long as we get all the entertainment we promised all our fans that we'll have pretty much every single racing weekend, Soumil.
Yeah, exactly. There's that. And I really hope that at some point we can get rid of it because, again, as I mentioned, it's fun for now, those cat and mouse games, but 3 or 4 races later, we'll be scratching our heads saying, this is not racing. And some people already have, and some really prominent people in the world of racing have. So there's that. But hey, actually, we've got a really fun section to kind of tell you about. Here's Lucien back on the podcast, not talking about the DRS like Kunal and I were in the last couple of months, but talking about his favorite Australian GP memories in his traditional format. So that's going to be awesome. Let's listen to that right here. And folks, on the video episode of this one, you can probably check out the podcast on whichever platform you actually listen to the Inside Line F1 podcast on. So check that section out to listen to Lucien and what his favorite memories of the Australian GP are. But we shall continue on with what we have next. And I think he's got a point, Kunal. He just spoke about having his money on Carlos Sainz after discussing all his amazing memories, Lucien, which is so great to listen. It's so much fun in his traditional format. But Carlos Sainz, I suppose there's a bit of an expectation, isn't it? Because after all that's happened in the first couple of races, he wouldn't want to be known as Ferrari's number 2. Would you back him for this weekend, per se?
You know what? We are now at the 3rd race of a 23-race calendar, right? And even though we are definitely not going to remember the 3rd race by the time we reach the 23rd race, the truth is that there are certain teams and drivers who actually need to deliver literally now. And I stand with Lucien when I say Carlos Sainz for the win. And Lucien, by the way, also has the lovely melodious jingles that you hear at the start and the end of the podcast as well. So thanks for your music, Lucien. But I'm going to actually have a pick of 3 things or 3 people or 3 teams that need to deliver at the 3rd race weekend of the season already, Soumil. So definitely Carlos Sainz Jr., he knows he has the tools now. He knows that he actually took the battle and won against Charles Leclerc in 2021. He knows he's supposed to do that in 2022 as well. So we've spoken about him in the previous episodes. He's definitely the one I would look for. The second, Daniel Ricardo. He has yet to score a point this season, right? And I know he's sounding extremely positive and he's not sounding like he's panicked, etc., etc. But who would have ever thought that Daniel Ricardo in the McLaren, the struggles would still continue in 2022? Yes, I know he's had a retirement, etc., etc., but he's definitely not gone and scorched the track against Lando Norris either in the limited two races that we've had up until now. And then the third, of course, Mercedes. Everybody's saying the magic fix to Mercedes' problems is soon coming. And how soon is just that? And just a quick word on Mercedes, Soumil, before I ask you who your 3 things to watch for this weekend are, we've literally, like we spoke before, had a triple header. We had the test, we had the race in Bahrain, we had the race in Saudi Arabia. So Mercedes couldn't really get the upgrades onto their car because everything just, all the sessions came to them really fast and quick, right? And there was no gap. But between Saudi Arabia and Australia, there has been a gap of a week. Of course, there's a larger distance for the team to travel if they had to bring any upgrades, etc. But would Mercedes have had enough time to get some fixes for their car this season and, for their car this weekend? Because let's remember 2 things. First is they are closer to 4th place than to second place. Not ideal situation for them to be, but they also have enough of a gap, in their performance. They have a buffer in their performance for them to experiment that bit more. And that's what they actually did with Lewis Hamilton in Saudi Arabia as well. The experimentation that cost Lewis a place in Q1, Soumil.
Yeah, you're right. And you kind of read a point from my mind that I was about to talk about, the upgrades, because Mercedes, at least they claim that there's no magic fix. So they'll have to work all the way through. I think they are bringing a rear wing to this particular weekend. So let's wait and see how that plays out. But you're right. They have the liberty to experiment. And this kind of brings me on very well onto the other drivers that I'm looking forward to, because Sergio Perez is the one I've picked for Red Bull. And Red Bull apparently are experimenting with upgrades as well. They seemingly have got some sort of a package coming in that's going to dramatically shed down the weight of their car, which is seemingly overweight. From what I've read, it's around a couple of tenths, but no point speculating. We'll only have to see to find out. And he seems to be the one who already is poised for that number 2 position, although he has proven that he can't quite be the number 1, right? He outqualified Max in Saudi Arabia, kind of lost the race through no fault of his own. So you don't want to be pushed down into that number 2 position, much like Carlos Sainz at Ferrari, even though you know that you have the tools to perform. So Sergio Perez is going to be one driver for me. And again, it kind of leads into the whole Leclerc versus Verstappen battle. Which upgrade is going to be better, the Ferrari one or the Red Bull one? Again, only time will tell. But it's so exciting to see this development war kind of spill out from the third race already. And then the other drivers that I have to pick out. Firstly, Fernando Alonso, because last week, it's been 2 weeks, but hey, last race, he completely got beat by Esteban Ocon in that battle that we had on track. Then, of course, there was the power unit failure that didn't kind of help out. But it seems like the pressure is on him. Seems like he's not like the alpha male who's the sole driver performing in that team anymore. Ocon is providing a threat. And that's amazing to watch. So for me, him delivering this weekend is going to be fun, because now, finally, there's a pressure on him, right? He's not like the only driver. And then, of course, similar thing can be said for Mick Schumacher, because suddenly, he's not the team leader. He's not the alpha. He's had a big crash in Saudi Arabia. He's now on the back foot. Kevin Magnussen, yes, he's more experienced, but you can see that they have almost the same amount of driving time in this particular car. So for him, it's a big moment. You don't want to be falling back into that number 2 territory. Also, certainly, because the team, that's what the perception they have, right? Then, okay, if you've lost in the first 7-8 races, you become the number 2. And for Mick, this is the crucial time that he doesn't quite become the number 2. So race number 3, it may seem early, but I think it kind of matters a lot at this moment in time for now.
It does. Can you imagine Schumacher as a number 2 driver when it was his father who very famously made the whole number 1 thing happen? But anyway, it's Mick's first time, around the Albert Park circuit. So he's got some learning to do, much as it would be for Tsunoda and for Zhou Guan Yu as well. The Alpines, you spoke about Fernando Alonso. Look out, guys. They're not pink this weekend. They are actually blue this weekend as well. And as for Ferrari, they have reunited with Mission Binal, which seems a bit of an opportunistic thing, or maybe, their separation and the reunification was just a part of the strategy. You cannot separate Philip Morris from Ferrari for too long, Soumil, can you?
Yeah, I think Mission Winnow, regardless of how you pronounce them, kind of got the inclination that Ferrari have taken their name into action this year. So it probably said, well, we kind of join in, right? Ferrari is winning now, and that was the mission. Sorry, failed pun, there's that. But Sebastian Vettel is back. That's not something that's bad at all. And he looks handsome this weekend, if I can dare say that. Again, that's not traditionally what we discuss, but he looks good, and so great to see him back here. And I think it'll be so great to see him once again re-establishing the pecking order at Aston Martin, because clearly that team has a second driver problem.
You mean a first driver problem if you're Lawrence Stroll. But, Vettel being back, there are 2 things to look out for Sebastian Vettel. First is he's not yet revealed the name of his racing car for 2022. And, given who pays his bills, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the name of some Aston Martin, James Bond character, etc. Because the new Bond film is also premiering this weekend, Soumil. So that's one thing to look for. And, Vettel is like one of those old schoolers again, saying, the Formula One season always starts for me in Australia. So, hey, I'll just land up and start racing in Australia. And that's what he's actually doing. But, jokes aside, it's great that COVID is over and done with for him. I will miss Nico Hülkenberg being in the car, but Vettel is probably far more popular and far more dependable for Aston Martin. I assume so. So let's see how he gets going in his first race of the season, because he also has had a troubled time in preseason testing, and frankly, he's actually not been in that car since almost a month. So if he gets into that car and he actually still outperforms Lance Stroll, I wonder if Ralf Schumacher is going to make another comment about Lance Stroll and his hobby of racing in Formula One, Soumil.
I kind of love it, and if you've got a parent to fund your hobby, why not? It kind of works out very well. But Kunal, before we wrap off, final thoughts about this weekend. What do you reckon is going to happen? What are your predictions as well, I must ask?
I would love to predict a Max Verstappen win, but I think it's going to be a Ferrari on the top step. And I think it's going to be Carlos Sainz this weekend. I think he would have had time to figure what's actually not 100% for him in that Ferrari. And he badly needs a win, like I've been saying, right? But truth be told, before, predictions, the one big question that I really hope we have an answer to, when I say we, I mean Formula One, will the Ferrari versus Red Bull battle continue this weekend as well? We've almost taken it for granted that, hey, every race weekend we turn up, there is going to be a battle at the front, whether it's a Ferrari versus Red Bull this season or a Red Bull versus Mercedes last season. So I really hope that that trend continues, that we have a battle, that all the upgrades, all the weight saving, all the reliability issues are kept aside, and we eventually have these two teams going hand in glove, and driver with helmet, and whatever it is that takes to sort of give us a battle this weekend as well, Soumil.
Yeah, exactly. And I just hope that the development war, although productive, it kind of keeps them together, because we don't quite want to see that kind of taking Ferrari away, right? Well, I kind of assume that they'll be the one losing out, but that's what's happened in the last 5 odd years, right? So let's hope that this ends out properly. Let's hope that this weekend, my prediction, Carlos Sainz as well, ends up winning the race, his first one. And what a place to do so, right? Albert Park, it's a place where we genuinely like to see good moments happen, more than others, because it's sunshine, daylight, start of the year, whatever you might like to call it. But folks, that's all from us right here today on this particular episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pitch the Podium. Subscribe to the podcast, leave us a good like, a good rating, and we shall be back post-qualifying for the review of that one. See you folks, have a good time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.